I called my friends in the Department of Justice in Washington, who were astounded that I was in some county theoretically named after some drunken Hawaiian sailors, and people couldn't pronounce the name right. Never mind, don't ask me how they got to the high desert. We've never quite figured that out. At any rate, when they got past that shock, they were able to tell me that that section had never been used anywhere. So I told the ranchers and my friend the commissioner, I said, I can buy you 2 years administratively. I can tie this agency up for 2 years. You folks better find some other way to make a living. You better get out of the ranching business. 20 years later, they're still in business. 20 years later, those that had lost grazing have recovered it. And 20 years later, the BLM sends its top management people 70 miles, one-way trip once a month to meet with the commissioners of Owyhee County in the Murphy, the population 60, the county seat. Fish and Wildlife Service comes every 3 months unless the commissioners call them sooner. The Department of Environmental Quality comes, Idaho Fish and Game comes. All of the agencies come because we discovered the law. We discovered a law that had been sitting there since '76. Now you ask, if this mandates the agencies to do it, and it does, why didn't they come to county government and local governments and say, fellas, we have this deal for you. We're supposed to coordinate with you. We're supposed to make our plans consistent with yours, so tell us what you want. Well, surprisingly, they didn't do that. So we had to discover it. 2 years later, Modoc County in California reached the same problem we had, and I came and helped them set up coordination. They managed to beat back the Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife, and for the next 15 years, Owyhee County and Modoc County, sister counties, were the only local governments in the country using this process. We lost no ranchers. Modoc County even gained some timber contracts back. And other counties sat around and looked and said, why do you guys get treated so well? Well, it's because we worked at it. We found the way and we made it work. 3 years ago, American Stewards of the Range began focusing on training and coordination. We now have 150 local governments, each one of them having the top agencies come to their table to try to negotiate. Imagine if 22,000 counties were involved in that. Imagine if 100,000 small towns and cities were involved. We wouldn't be in the fix we're in. So why don't they get involved? Well, it's hard work. It's harder work than county commissioners and county supervisors are used to. You have to think. You have to rely on advisory citizens groups. You have to do things progressively. You can't just sit and wait for the agency to come. It's a 10th Amendment tool. Coordination is exactly that. So is charter cities and charter counties. It is a way for cities and counties to begin to express themselves far more freely than a general government, city or county. Under the California Constitution and under the constitutions of many states, a city or county, all they have to do is decide. The government simply has to decide that they are going to become charter government. And when they do, municipal powers are given over to them without restriction by the state. What are municipal powers? The courts of California have defined them. The courts of other states have defined them, and basically they all come down to this: the police powers. Those powers preserved to local government by the 10th Amendment. Those that lead to public safety, health, and welfare. Zoning is one of the powers that can be assumed by a charter city without compliance with all of the technicalities of the state planning and zoning statutes. That's a tool of the 10th Amendment. In 3 minutes, I'm going to finish the 10th Amendment. It is, as I said, I think it's the most important portion of the Constitution. There were 4 states that would not ratify the Constitution until the Bill of Rights, including the 10th Amendment, was presented to them. They refused. The 10th Amendment, a lot of people say, created the rights in the states and the people. It created nothing. When the people walked into the Constitutional Convention, they gave part of their power to the national government. They gave them. It wasn't taken from them, they gave them. They gave them two powers: to provide for the national defense and to provide for free interstate commerce. And the interstate commerce they were thinking about was the Massachusetts manufacturer who wanted to ship his goods to South Carolina, not having to go through 7 tariffs and 7 different currencies to get there. All the other powers, other than those two, were reserved, according to the amendment, to the states and to the people. That doesn't mean they were created in them. It means, boys, you got only what we gave you. The rest are still ours. We came to this country with those powers. God gave them to us, and we haven't given them to you, so don't take them. And if you try to take them, it's unconstitutional. It's a violation of the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment has sit virtually unused for decades at a time. I heard 2 political science professors the other day on the television in Boise say that there was no such thing as state sovereignty, that all ended with the Civil War. No, what ended with the Civil War was the question of whether a state could secede constitutionally. And the decision was, by war, you can't. But it does not take away the sovereignty of the state. More importantly, it doesn't take away the sovereignty of the people. I've been focusing for 3 or 4 days mostly on local government and how you can get a town of 400 people to represent your interests, business interests. Companies can take advantage of this special status that local government has. But one of the most important things are coalitions of citizens, as we're working on in Siskiyou County right now. Coalitions of citizens who can ride the coattails of little towns to protect their rights. The foundation that has been mentioned is the foundation called Trademark America. Sylvia has some brochures that I hope she'll get handed out to you about our next conference in Sacramento on the 10th Amendment. It's a foundation devoted to several things, but mainly to promote local control by the citizens through local government or by themselves. The first project that I intend to offer to the Board of Directors as soon as I finish this whirlwind trip is to take on the project of helping the people in Siskiyou County reclaim the county from the federal and state control, to attempt to delist and not from a defensive position, but from a proactive position, setting forth an environmental plan that the states and the federal governments will have to come to try to be consistent with. The National Environmental Policy Act, which I think probably most of you have heard about, NEPA, for years has been used by the anti-development, anti-progress, anti-grazing groups as a tool against us. And only when I started to help those Texans did I find out what a great tool it is for us. When you read the legislative history and when you read the language of the act, the purpose is to protect the human environment and keep it in harmony with the natural environment, not the other way around. And the regulations of the Council on Environmental Quality define the human environment as including aesthetics, religion, culture, custom, and economy. You haven't heard that from the courts because we've never used it, but we're going to start. And we'll start here because, as Craig could tell you if we had more time, there's 3 little entities up there. One's an enclave of governments, a fire district and a school district, and then there's 2 towns, population what, 600 between them, or each 600 each? Pardon? The towns are what? Happy Camp, Fort Jones, and Edna. Those people were there. They heard the proposition over a long, long period of time, 3 hours, of how this works, how they can make it work. and they were ecstatic. And why? I find that everywhere I go and there's a local government that's ready to take back the people's rights, they're ecstatic because they have given up hope until now. The hope, my friends, has been there. It's been in the federal statutes. Congress gave that hope. They have put it in every statute that relates to natural resources. It's in the Homeland Security Act.